Good. We are very delighted to present today's webinar on the impact of social media on body image and eating disorders in young people. In the age of digital connectivity, we cannot underestimate the influence of social media on our well-being and self-esteem. So we hope we're going to explore our experiences, present research, and our views, and maybe share some tips on how to navigate this important issue. And the last 15 minutes, we hope to hear from you about your experiences and your views around social media, body image, and eating disorders. So today's aims are to, we hope that you will understand better what eating disorders are, the impact and the intersection between social media and body image perception in young people, but also the role of social media in the development and the maintenance and risk for eating disorders. And hopefully we're going to discuss some steps towards helping young people at risk. Just a reminder here, some housekeeping. This is part of the Maudsley Learning Series, and South London and Maudsley are thriving towards tackling inequality, eliminating harassment, and promoting equity and equality and opportunity for all. I need to move this a bit. So this is just the layout of the webinar. We hope to start soon with the main presentation. And then the presentation is going to last for 45 minutes. And then we're going to allow the last 15 minutes, as I said before, for reflections, questions, and hopefully continuing the dialogue about social media, eating disorders, and body image. Some other housekeeping, which is quite important though. Please let people know that you're attending a webinar if you're home, if you're working from home, and try to protect this space as you were doing it as if you were participating in a training. You might find some of the topics and discussions quite triggering. They might be distressing, so please do not hesitate to take a step out or take a break if any of this content is distressing for you or anyone around you who is attending the webinar with you. You can use the chat throughout the presentation, and we have Anya and Francesca and Charlie who are moderating the session, but they will also be sharing some of the research. And we hopefully can address your messages throughout the presentation, but also towards the end of the webinar. The last 15 minutes will be used for that purpose. The session is recorded, as you all know. Please mute your microphones throughout the presentation, but you can raise your hand towards the end, the last 15 minutes, and we can hear from you. We're more than happy to hear from you. Okay, so this is a short introduction of our team. So my name is Maria Levano. I'm a lecturer in psychology at the Department of Psychology at IOPPN at King's College London, and most of my research lies in child and adolescent mental health. We're doing lots of lived experience research, focusing on co-production and developing new interventions for young people with eating disorders, and I'm specialized in transitions of young people from adolescent to adult services. And something else about me, I'm also a trainee in child and adolescent psychodynamic therapy. And I'm joined today by Anya Hennigan and Francesca Marcel, who are both postgraduate students at IOPPN. Anya is doing a PhD with me, and Francesca was my undergraduate student, and now she's moved on to her MSc in mental health studies. But you can hear more from Anya and Francesca.
Hi everyone, as Maria said, I'm a PhD student at King's College London, and my research is focused on siblings' experiences of having a brother or sister with an eating disorder, which is largely influenced by my own personal experiences. We're currently doing some research at the minute to try and develop a questionnaire for siblings, and if you'd like to know more about that, please feel free to contact Maria after the session and she can pass it on. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Francesca, and yeah, as Maria said, I graduated this summer from King's with a BSc in psychology, where I did my undergraduate research project with Maria, which was on the effects of social media on body image and eating behaviors in university students. So I'm going to be discussing these findings later on in the presentation. And now I'm an MSc student on the Mental Health Studies program at King's, where I'm going to be doing transition experiences of young people with eating disorders and developing a co-production intervention, again with Maria, as part of my dissertation.
Great, thank you both. So before we start, I thought it would be interesting to engage you a bit. So we have prepared a few questions to see your views around eating disorders, social media, and body image. So I think at this point, I will stop sharing my screen, and maybe Charlie will pull up the polls.
Okay, so I've just launched the polls for everybody. Hopefully that's available to everyone. Though we do have 3 questions, and in a single choice format. We'll be able to track how many of our lovely attendees have responded to the poll. And at the end, when you're ready, Maria, we can share the results so everyone can review them.
Sure. Yes, let's do this. We do have a winner for the first one, I think. People are still voting. So the first question is like, what areas do you think social media impact? And there are 5 choices. We're still voting. So yes, I think we can share the first one just to see what people thought. So majority, like 93% of you thought that, and it's 232 people attending. Although I cannot see you. Yes, that self-esteem, body image, sleep, social relationships, and mental health, they're all affected by social media. Yes, I would totally agree, and we will explore this intersectionality further on in this presentation. Please carry on with the second one, Charlie. Right, I got it now. So yes, the second question, it was like, to what extent do you agree that there is a link between social media and eating behavior? So around 60% of you think there is a link. Actually 90% you think there is a link, and some people there somewhat agree. Yes, because there's a difference between a link and a causational relationship. What type of social media activity do you think can impact eating behaviors? Most people will say, again, all of the above, including fitness accounts, influencers, pro-eating disorder accounts, following friends, food accounts, and all of the above. Yes, again, these are all factors we're going to explore today. I just want to see your views and see if we're on the same page. So I will be sharing my screen again and continue with the webinar. Thank you for your responses. That's quite important. Okay, good. I think that's all sorted. So here are some fears related to social media and eating behaviors and eating disorders. So some of the most prevalent fears that people have expressed are related to unrealistic body standards and beauty standards, along with social comparison, cyberbullying risks that many young people are at risk for when they're navigating social media platforms, diet promotion, peer influence, and a diet culture, which is reinforced within social media platforms. Eating disorders, there is this conception that there is, a strong association between eating disorders and social media. And because of the triggering content that they often include, self-harming is also related to this, along with body shaming and feelings of isolation and loneliness when navigating some of pro-eating behaviors and pro-eating disorder behaviors, websites or forums. However, we're hoping for a more body positive culture and diverse culture and more acceptance towards body positivity and diverse body sizes. And educational awareness is of paramount importance, along with creating supporting communities in school, at home, in every institution that young people are part of. Targeted interventions which actually promote digital literacy, along with mental health resources, which are accessible not only to young people, but also to their parents, their carers, siblings, and other people involved with the young people, teachers, educators, more online therapy platforms, early identification for at-risk individuals. And this is something we're focusing on today. What do we mean by at-risk individuals? That would be more pertinent to adolescents who are much more sensitive, and even younger ages, like because we tend to see, we know from a UK report that actually that was quite surprising for me, that 3 to 4 year olds in the UK, and about 20% of them, they have access and they're using social media, which was very, very surprising given their cognitive and developmental state. And policy and legislation is really, really significant around this issue of social media, what should be said and what should not be said, and what kind of caveats are there to protect our young people from being harmed. So let's look at adolescence and some sociocultural standards, because mostly today we're going to focus on the sociocultural risks, not on the genetic or developmental or other risks involved in eating disorders, but more on the sociocultural aspects, which are very important. So as we all know, adolescence is a very sensitive and critical period, which is underlined by significant changes in developmental, social, emotional, and cognitive domains. But our young people, they're also experiencing lots of institutional transitions. And what we mean by institutional transitions is they might be moving from primary to secondary education, or from high school to university, living home, so changing residential places, or they might take on a new job role. These are all significant life changes. So actually, they're in a period of building independence. But also, as we know, adolescence is a very significant period for identity formation. It's the period where we're developing our personal and social identity, and that's how body image and body perception are quite intertwined with our social and personal identity in our days, but even historically. Smartphones and social media are central to young people's lives, and they're very important channels of communication for social and personal connection. This is the way that our young people interact and connect with each other. It's not just harming young people, but there's also a positive aspect within this personal connection. So young people 16 to 24 years, they are the most active social media users, which is not surprising. And 91% use the internet to access social media networking sites like Facebook. Actually, Facebook is old-fashioned nowadays. I'd say more Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. Yes, I'm still using Facebook, but I guess, you know, I'm not Generation Z. So like, but also they provide important sources for support, right? And for entertainment, information sharing, following influencers and celebrities, which have a twofold influence or impact. And then it's quite striking that, you know, recently there's been quite a rise on mental health issues amongst young people with regards to depression, eating disorders, especially post-COVID. That's something we tend to see as a trend. Self-harming incidents have increased among adolescents, especially females, in the recent past. However, we don't know if there is more reporting around these issues and more awareness, and that's why these rates have increased, or is it because they actually reflect an increasing trend amongst these mental health problems and symptoms. And there's good research to suggest that young people, adolescents who are using social media platforms more than 2 hours per day, they're likely to report poor mental health, which is very much related to psychological distress or suicidal thoughts. But again, this is a link. It doesn't mean that the one is causing the other. I need to highlight this. Because eating disorders, for example, is a multifactorial outcome, and sociocultural risks is one aspect that plays a role in the development and maintenance, and might be hindering or recovery. So 7 in 10 of our young people, according to the Royal Society for Public Health, are experiencing cyberbullying, which is associated with depression, anxiety, loss of sleep, self-harm, and loneliness. These are all important figures to look at. So adolescents, they're massively exposed to heavily edited images of their peers, of their influencers. And unfortunately, like Instagram, for example, which most of us were familiar with, it kind of enhances this, these notions around filter encouragement, and it's something which is very much reinforced and promoted. So heavily edited images, and there's lots of research around this area and how much this influences body perception and body image and identity, and increases insecurities and causes emotional distress amongst young people, of course. So these visuals showcase thin and fit women who are advocating for exercise, nutritious diets. There's lots of, this is called fitspiration, as I've learned recently, and or there are other pro-eating disorder websites or forums that people join, that there is a prevalent diet culture there. And I'm saying, like, I'm referring to women and females here because actually, historically speaking, females have been targeted in as large consumers in the diet culture, like, so this is something to consider. However, on the other side of things, we should not overlook males. And these symptoms may manifest, and they do manifest differently in males who have been massively overlooked in research studies and in clinical practice, because there is this prevalent cultural stereotype that males do not develop eating disorders, it's only females. And we will talk more about this further today. So there's lots of research which has linked appearance-focused content and social media displayed on social media to poor body image and low self-esteem, and which unfortunately often is during adolescence and in general later on in life. It makes you question your self-worth, self-esteem, because body image in our culture, and especially in westernized, but also in non-westernized, according to recent research, we tend to see this a lot in Asian cultures, that these images of women encouraging weight loss, they're also intertwined with success and acceptance and being attractive, and the sense of belongingness, which is very, very important again during adolescence. So these are all things to take into account. So these are some of the prevalent models. Like, there's lots of models which are trying to explain the intersectionality between sociocultural factors and different institutions and different systems in explaining internalized body ideals and how young people are influenced. So there is first the tripartite influence model, which basically purports that social media, peers, and culture and family, they're quite important, and they might explain these views around internalized body images. But the internalized ideal body theory actually purports that all these factors together play a significant role in the way we understand our body image ideals. And then social reinforcement is quite big, because feedback from individuals that promote the ideal of a slim body actually promotes, again, these internalized ideals. And so, for example, how many likes you get in a posted or edited photo, and if you see that the edited photo, for example, gets more likes than the unedited one, obviously that says something about our culture, but it can be falsely interpreted by feelings of inadequacy or not being good enough by the young people who do not receive enough likes. Weight-related criticism, I mean, that's something we tend to get a lot from family members or peers during adolescence, because there's lots of body changes because of biological changes and hormonal changes, but our cultures, they tend to be quite high in criticism or making weight-related comments, which are not helpful at all. Even when it's like a positive comment about, reinforcing weight loss. So these actions actually encourage the assimilation of the thin ideal and dissatisfaction with one's body, and may lead to disordered eating patterns and modeling behaviors. It's mimicking behaviors like portrayed on social media in order to fit in certain cultures is another thing to look at. So there's lots of studies actually here. That's the main message, the key message, that they show the relationship between weight, BMI, and body dissatisfaction. And actually what we tend to see as a trend is that people who are more overweight or they fit in within the obese categories, they tend to report higher levels of body dissatisfaction, which is also and lower self-esteem, which is quite alarming again. So very importantly, like body image worries constitute the third most significant challenge causing harm to young people 16 to 25 years, so including emerging adults. And the first two are work-related or academic-related, but all these three factors, these three categories, they intersect with each other if you think about it, and perceived failure in one domain might lead to worries related to appearance or not being good enough. And obviously there is a growing body of research. There's lots of studies which are highlighting, emphasizing the link between adolescent social media usage and increased concerns about body image. But concerns about body image is not the same as eating disorders, of course. But it could be a persistent indicator. So let's move here and see like what some national surveys say about adolescent views and reports. So 57% reported they had started a diet. 79% said that how they look is important. And then we have 10% of males who, secondary school males who are using steroids. So when I was talking earlier before about, different symptoms and different manifestations and different demographics, that's what I meant. So the Mental Health Foundation survey, including young people 13 to 19 years, they showed that 35% actually are not happy, and they are worried about their body image, which is quite a high and alarming percentage again. 95% reported that they would change their appearance. And this is relevant to the study we did, and Francesca is going to talk to you about with the young people shortly, with university students. Because appearance is not just weight, it's the whole beauty ideal standards perpetuated by our culture. 13% develop an eating disorder by age 20. That's quite high as well, but that's an older statistic here we've got. So as I said, last year, my undergraduate students, they conducted a qualitative study. So basically they conducted 3 online focus groups to diversify the sample, because most of the sample we've got now is from very specific demographics and is not really representative. And this can have further implications on interventions and later on. So yes, Francesca, you can tell us a bit more about this study that you conducted.
Sure. So yeah, as Maria said, it was a qualitative study using an online focus group design. So we were able to recruit participants from a wide range of universities, nationalities, ethnicities, and we had a roughly equal split of men and women in our study, which was good to get some data from men as well. As Maria said earlier, the research on eating disorders is quite women focused. So our inclusion criteria for the study was regular social media users, current university students in any country, and between the ages of 18 to 25. So we conducted the focus groups and then used reflexive thematic analysis. And so, yeah, this slide shows kind of the plethora of nationalities and ethnicities that we were able to recruit participants from.
And this is the results we came up with.
Yes, so this is the thematic map that was from my final dissertation report. And so I derived 3 main themes from the focus group transcripts. And the first theme was social media use and mental health ramifications. And this theme centered on the kind of negative effects from just passively using social media. So a lot of the participants discussed kind of just the effects of scrolling endlessly on Instagram or TikTok and the effect this had on their mental health. And this also went in hand with consuming enhanced curated content on social media, because social media essentially is a highlight reel where people try to portray themselves in the best manners that they can. And so constantly consuming this type of data led to how people kind of set expectations of themselves as well. And this is further exemplified by the sub-themes pertaining to this theme, which was the implications of influencer culture and social comparisons and conforming to unrealistic body standards from social media use. So the second theme that I kind of deduced from the data is the impact of online standardized beauty ideals and the impact of this on different socio-demographic groups. So age difference and the effects of social media use on mental well-being were evident and indicative of the need to consider how exposure to aestheticized content impacts young people in terms of their eating behavior and body image. Additionally, gender differences and cultural variations were evident in societal beauty standards and the impact that this had on our participants. And then finally, oh, sorry, Maria, I just had one more theme to go over. Just really quickly, the third theme was the redeeming characteristics of social media use. And so this was kind of the positives that participants discussed, and it was social media use for social connection, which was where participants discussed how they valued being able to keep in contact with friends and family, especially while being abroad. And then realistic depictions of influencer body image, which is where influencers kind of showed how they looked natural and unposed, and how they could look posed 2 minutes later. And it just showed that a lot of the stuff you see on social media is curated. And then there was also the benefits of consuming health-related content and the importance of actively seeking and consuming social media content.
Can you move?
Yes, yeah, we can move on now. So these are a couple of the quotes from our focus group transcripts. So I'll just pick a couple to kind of go into a bit more detail. So the second quote from the male participant, which says, "So I'm going through diets right now and watching my calorie intake because of just wanting to achieve a certain look that they found from social media." This kind of depicts the unrealistic and fake standards that are set by social media, which young impressionable people perceive to be true. And then the third quote, which is from a female participant, and says, "Seeing all of the models on my For You page, it would make me feel really bad about what I'm eating, especially my cultural food, which is very, very oily." This demonstrates the pervasive nature of Western society's beauty ideals on social media and the direct effect of this on individuals from other cultural backgrounds. And the further implications of this is that it can impact people's culture, like their sense of identity and their relationship with their culture, and kind of give them this idea that they need to attain to something that's just unrealistic and unattainable for who they are fundamentally. So we found quite a lot of that, and it was really had really damaging effects on some people, and lasted into their early 20s as well. So these were kind of the key findings from the study, which found that passively consuming objectifying content from influencers, and this is particularly in relation to women and the sexualization of young women as well, especially when influencers lacked transparency about the edits they're making to their photos. It really had a great impact on mental health. And so extensive exposure of social media and unrealistic beauty standards from a young age, it caused engagement in social comparison behaviors, which led to then detrimental eating patterns and relationships with food as well. And the westernization of global beauty standards on social media affected individuals from all cultures, and this was related to body dissatisfaction, shame, and low self-worth. So despite the negative findings, some positives were also found from social media use, and realistic portrayals of body image on social media improve participants' acceptance of their own bodies. And this suggested that actively engaging with positive content is beneficial. And social media also had utility as a platform for social connection and seeking out positive communities, which promoted participants' health goals and acceptance of their own body image. So, yeah.
No, did you want to say anything else about this?
Just in summary, it's quite crucial for people to be selective about the content they consume online, just because of the significant impact that certain types of content can have the ability to negatively impact mental health.
Yeah, thank you so much. That was a very ritual, very ritual data that we've got from this study. Of course, there's, we can expand on these findings and carry on with more qualitative studies to find out the impact on body image. And that was particularly about body image and eating behaviors. It wasn't directly related to eating disorders, but you could tell from people's accounts that that was a strong predictor for eating disorders. And this is all quite alarming. So body image is not just a female issue. I can highlight this more. Young males are also vulnerable, and that's something we came across in this study, and influenced by the muscular or well-toned bodies like they see online. It's just like they show this with different patterns. And social media, like there's lots of studies which pose social media as a risk factor to eating disorders as emerging global public health issue. And that's why we shouldn't just look at, Westernized patterns, but also we should include non-Western groups to explore these issues and understand other influences that we have not taken into account so far. So let's look at the intersection with eating disorders and social media. Perfectionism, which has also been accounted for as a strong personality trait in eating disorders, is also something which is promoted and encouraged through social media platforms. And then self-esteem and body dissatisfaction, they seem to be interlinked, and a false sense of identity, thinking about, all these edited images that people are called to post. And so also comparison, of course, there is this tendency, and sometimes it's unavoidable if you're navigating these social media platforms, to compare yourself to all these unrealistic images that you're exposed to. So these are all things to be aware, alongside the biological and psychological underlying mechanisms in eating disorders. We need to understand, in terms of the etiology, like the causes of eating disorders, these are complex multifactorial outcomes, and they're not yet fully, all the mechanisms are not yet fully understood. There are biological, psychological, sociocultural, and behavioral factors interplaying. However, in that case, body image has been identified as a significant and persistent and consistent predictor of eating disorders, according to recent research. So body image concerns about how we're feeling, thinking, and acting towards our bodies, our perception of our bodies, which is also interlinked our perception of who we are, sometimes falsely, and this could lead to harmful eating behaviors in terms of acting. So eating disorders, they do happen in diverse populations, and anorexia is the most well-known one and the most prevalent. However, other eating disorders, and we're going to talk about them, like bulimia nervosa or binge eating disorder or pica, they're not that well understood, or like the public, when they're thinking about eating disorders, they're thinking about anorexia. So anorexia is most prevalent in high-income post-industrialized countries, including the United States and Australia, or many European countries, and Australia, New Zealand, and Japan. And we tend to see lower rates among Latinos, African Americans, and Asian populations in the States, though. Potentially, though, this is very much intertwined with access to mental health services at the same time, and how much they trust mental health professionals, because there's lots of stigma underlying eating disorders, which is also impacting seeking professional support. And there's good research to suggest that sociocultural factors around Black women have a greater acceptance of diverse body types and a broader understanding of beauty. So that's why this might explain why there are lower rates. Still, we don't have enough data, though, around these groups' demographics. Unfortunately, in Asian countries, we see that food attitudes and levels of body dissatisfaction are similar to ours, or even worse in certain Western countries. This is for educational purposes here, because I know many members of the public are attending. So eating disorders are linked to self-esteem, and that's where you can see also the relationship between body image and self-perception, etc. But there are complex mental health conditions underlined by disturbances in eating behaviors, in thoughts, perception, emotions around food, body weight, shape and appearance, and they have a major impact on sociocognitive and psychological functioning. So here I have listed the most common ones: anorexia, bulimia, binge eating, ARFID, and OSFID, with very little explanations for our friends who want to understand more about the specifics of the clinical manifestation of this eating disorders. Just to give you an overview, and of course, you can find more information if you're accessing the relevant studies and websites, but this is good to understand what's coming next. So in the UK, it is estimated that there are more than 1 million of people with eating disorders, and you can see the trend that is going higher up. Here, this year, the reports are lower just because there was a large cybersecurity incident which affected data collection. So obviously, we're estimated that this is much higher. Very, very alarming. But again, is it that more cases are reported, or there are actually more cases presented to services? And eating disorders, they often exist together with depression, anxiety, self-harming symptoms, which they all have to be holistically treated. They have the highest mortality rate amongst all psychiatric disorders, and they are linked to repeated hospital admissions. It's only, according to research, only 50% of individuals fully recover. However, there's lots of debate around what constitutes full recovery. Up to 25% of people with eating disorders are male, which is quite striking, and that's why we need to shift our attention towards this demographic as well. It is typically first appear in adolescence and early adulthood, where 2/3 of cases continue for 9 years and 1/3 for over 20 years. So just to understand the severity of eating disorders. So, and it takes an average 3.5 years for someone to seek support and receive treatment, because most of the time people do not realize that there is lots of secretive behaviors around eating disorders. But you need to remember that eating disorders, they are treatable, and individuals can achieve full and sustained recoveries. And the earlier someone seeks treatment, the more likely they are to recover quicker and actually sustain recovery and not relapsing. Another important thing to know, which is against the prevalent stereotypes and myths, is that the majority of individuals with eating disorders, they fall within a normal weight range. And as we said, however, social media is not the direct cause of eating disorders. It could be a risk factor contributing to eating disorders. And of course, it might not be helping people who are in recovery.
Sorry to interrupt, Maria. Just letting you know that there's about 15 minutes left.
Thank you. Yes, I knew you would say that. Yes. Yes, and I will have to wrap it up like within the next 2-3 minutes, so we can open the floor for questions, etc. So that's quite important. Like in 2020 BEAT survey, BEAT is like a large charity for people with eating disorders. 83% felt that there was not enough coverage of eating disorders in the media, which is quite interesting. And 48% they felt that their diagnosis was not represented accurately, because there's lots of influencers of people who are portraying themselves as knowledgeable and literate around eating disorders, and they give very often false advice, or they might be harming young people. So a key message, the take-home message, is that eating disorders can affect everyone, people of all genders, ages, races, religions, ethnicities, and sexual orientations. And we need to be aware of the myths and stereotypes. So eating disorders are about young girls who wanted to be slim, or actually or people who they're refusing to eat, or a cry for attention, or self-volatile behaviors. So these are all things to keep in mind. There's lots of stigma associated to eating disorders, as it has been condemned as a privileged condition affecting only white females, middle class females. And actually the stigma in the mental health community or in the healthcare community, that they're difficult to work with, very resistant. So this is something that we can discuss further now, the next 15 minutes, to have a thought about your own biases about eating disorders and who you think might have it. So you don't look thin enough, you don't look like having an eating disorder. They all interpreted through the lenses of you're not good enough. And this has further implications for treatment and impacts carers as well, and can lead to exacerbation of presenting symptoms and also self-harming behaviors which are associated. But it is this idea of not being good enough, or not being thin enough, and people might be trying further and harder. So one thing which is quite alarming again is that about 42 million cases were neglected in 2019, which also underscores the need for more funding around eating disorder research and a reevaluation of the perception and approach of our existing treatments as well. 42% of children under the minimum age of requirement, they still have social media profiles, which is a current concern, because if you have very, very young people under the age of 13 accessing pro-eating disorder content or idealized body images, and they're still developing cognitively and socially and developmentally, this could have a tremendous impact, and possibly we're increasing the risk for this group. Another thing is that social media body image and eating disorders, they have gained recognition. However, there's no much policy and a solid legal framework around the use of social media in vulnerable groups. So these are all things to consider. And I think I'm going to stop here with this final comments around social media impact and the protective role they could have. And because this is recorded, you can maybe also have maybe we can also share the slides if that's helpful. If you want to navigate the resources we have included towards the last slide, where to seek help. Let me show you. So we have a slide with charities and health services where people can seek further support, or also have a look at the resources provided by charities for carers and young people and the public. This is not an exhaustive list, but yes, thank you. I'm going to stop here and I'm going to open the floor to the audience, because I'm sure there are a few things in the chat that has not been addressed. Thank you. And feel free to use your microphones or the chat in order to contribute to the questions and answers.
Thank you, Maria. Just having a look at the Q&A function at the bottom of the Zoom screen, you've actually got 11 questions coming in now. I'm not sure if you're able to see them or if you'd like me to read them out for you.
I think I just accessed them,
Okay.
but thank you. So Kiera says if they can have access to this PowerPoint, yes, I would be more than happy to distribute this PowerPoint slideshow with the audience, if that's possible. Charlie, do you think it is? Or...
We could, because everyone's registered, we should have access to everyone's email addresses, so we can certainly circulate a copy of the slide set used today after the event.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you. And hopefully useful for people to use within their teams if they need to. Another attendee says, in clinical practice, I will discuss social media as a part of the assessment. I provide psychoeducation to children, young people and their families regarding social media, and also step-by-step advice regarding blocking certain content on social media. That's quite interesting. Yeah. Do you have any suggestions on further interventions to support children and young people in eating disorder services regarding social media use? My view and my response to this, it depends on, when you're saying like services, it depends whether they're inpatient services, outpatient, because I guess depending on the severity and the stage that the young person is through, like in terms of recovery, and it should be case by case. And also it's age related, because it's not the same if you have someone who is 12 to someone who is 19 and has had an eating disorder for 7 years. Obviously they're quite they're very digital literate and how to navigate these websites, but I think psychoeducation is really, really important, and but also involving the carers as much as you can, like including parents, siblings, and everyone who is living with a young person, and awareness. But there's lots of papers which, again, I said they're included in, because of time restraints, I couldn't share about specific interventions. But I would say there's not much out there than certain tips and not immediate interventions. I don't know if you, Anya, have any suggestions, because you're working with carers as well.
Yeah, I would say encourage the use of sort of more neutral or positive accounts. For example, like research has shown, it's not necessarily the time that you spend on social media, but it's what you're doing on social media that influences body image and eating behaviors. For example, following a fitness influencer is going to have a more negative effect than, for example, following a travel account. So it's just sort of educating, I suppose, people on what is the most useful accounts to follow.
Yeah, I agree. And I would also recommend, I forgot about this, and this is very important, instead of, navigating people to or saying what to do or not to do, also to showing people who have recovered, people with lived experience. That's quite empowering, given all the research we're doing. So showing people like content which is related to recovery, that it is possible. So there's a different narrative out there. Because of time restraints, I'm going to move on to the next one. So yes, you said that other non-developed countries have lower rates of eating disorders. I would say we don't have enough data due to poor treatment. No, I didn't say poor treatment. I said they might have lower specific demographic groups. They report lower rates because of more body positivity within these communities. But also to respond to your comment, you're saying, do you believe it could be due to another reason, lack of diagnosis? And I believe lack of diagnosis and also training of, of general of GPs and of mental health professionals, and attitudes, medical attitudes, mental health professionals' attitudes towards eating disorders is another reason. But again, I will say we don't have an adequate number of studies to say that it's due to poor treatment. It's also like the sociocultural stigma around eating disorders and how well it's understood. through cultural lenses. But yes, totally agree with you, the lack of diagnosis and what kind of assessment tools are used and what kind of provision is there in these countries. Thank you.
Sorry, Maria, could I just add quickly as well, let you say, it's about the culture and how they're perceived within that culture. A lot of the diagnostic criteria that is used was created with Western societies and cultures in mind. So for a lot of the eating disorder criteria, the behaviours have to cause distress to the patient, whereas there are some cultures where they describe disorders that are very similar to what we would constitute eating disorders, but there's no mention of distress by the participants. It could be, for example, overeating until you make yourself sick, but they don't feel distressed by this. It's just sort of a condition that happens. So I think that is also due to lower rates of reported eating disorders, because the way that they would interpret the criteria and their behaviours are different.
Definitely, the conceptualization of mental health and specifically of eating disorders is quite has further implications on treatment and yes, medical community attitudes. Magda says, could you please share some data? What works with teens? That's a good question. What works? I mean, I don't think there's a rule of thumb. What works with teens to curb their usage of social media? I think most parents are struggling with this as well, or for them to become more resistant to the negative effects. I would appreciate practical tips, please. So if you access, like once these slides are accessible to everyone, you will be able to navigate this these websites at the last slide, in the last slide, which is about charities and other mental health services, which actually Young Minds and the Beat, which is eating disorder charity, they have some really, really good tips and reports, very detailed reports on what to do, what to avoid, and some of the tips were taken from there. So I would definitely suggest the Beat. Yes, the references will be shared through the slideshow. Yes. We loved access to slides. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Top tips for promoting healthy body image in young people. First of all, there should be like workshops and psychoeducational workshops in a more consistent manner across all schools in the country. I mean, not just this country, every country really. And not just like for mid-adolescents. They should start early on, like you know, at year 4 and year 4 and year 5, because actually, like, there's lots of research from the States which says that a high percentage of 7-year-olds, more than 50% actually, they want to go on a diet. I mean, this says a lot about a culture if you look at, you know, what their children and young people are reporting. So I would say that it really depends on the age group, but interventions to start very early in schools. But it's also, you know, other institutions, that's the family institution, how they're treating eating and food and weight, and whether they're high. We tend to see eating disorders, they're more prevalent in high criticism families as well. So again, I would also recommend to look at the final slides. I include some of the most some of the interventions which have been implemented in different areas, but also community youth hubs and community clubs, and it, so, you know, adolescents, they follow patterns and they follow family patterns. They tend to do things that they see in the family as well. Like if you've got parents, you know, that they're like on their phones the whole day, like, or they spend a great amount of time on their phones, they're most likely to imitate such behaviors. Or if they're interacting with their peers at school. So I know, like, most schools, many schools, they have no phone policy. But again, I believe the truth is in the middle, because if something is completely forbidden, it's more likely to get a strong reaction from adolescents. Eureka doesn't mention neurodivergent autism. Yes, and yes. Obviously, we only presented a segment of our research. We're doing lots of different projects within eating disorders, but because today's webinar was focusing on social media and body image, that's why we only focus on this, and we do not, because neurodivergence and autism and ADHD is a different chapter. Although we, you know, then if you have someone who has autism and an eating disorder, how would you treat this person and educate them in the way they're navigating social media would be, you know, a topic itself. But yes, we're looking into neurodivergent populations and eating problems, and there are other people in the wider eating disorder research center at King's that doing loads of research in this area. If majority of people with ED are within normal weight range, why does access to help appear to rely on BMI and only high risk get this access? Yes, thank you for this comment. I also have the same question. And I don't know which country you're specifically referring to. Is it just UK or, you know, from different parts of the world? But it seems to be a dominant theme that which has to do with cultural misconceptions and also medical community, medical professionals' misconceptions around eating disorders and lack of education in the public, because most people know about anorexia, most people won't know about bulimia nervosa or binge eating disorder, would not be considered an eating disorder, and culturally might be perceived as being overweight, so it's your fault, more attributional kind of error kind of attitudes, you know. And that's what we are trying to tackle, and, you know, by revamping current treatment approaches around eating disorders. It should not be only around weight restoration. Of course, if you have people who are diagnosed in very late stages of anorexia, the first thing you need to do, which is a matter of life or death, is weight restoration. However, we need to be able to prevent or intervene very early before it becomes a matter of life and death. How do you feel we can change the narrative in society, and importantly, how can the government play a pivotal role in this change? Yes, Sarah, I totally agree. So, I mean, the more awareness and more awareness in a less stigmatizing way through schools and all the social institutions, and also, you know, more funding and around eating disorder research, and I mean, more campaigns and more, you know, there's lots going on at the moment actually to convince the government to take action and take eating disorders more seriously. What do you think, Francesca and Anya, as well, in terms, because I keep talking and talking, I need to.
Yeah, I think the most valuable thing that I found from doing this study was that it really does start at such a young age, the kind of exposure to social media. And I think, I mean, personally as well, just when I was 12, first downloading Instagram, and there's no transparency around the content you're consuming, and it all becomes so internalized, and it's everywhere. Like, it's your television, like the movies you watch on your phone, like you see it all the time. So I think there needs to be a kind of dialogue in schools primarily. I think there needs to be more kind of regulations around that, and like making it a priority in education where you can learn about it in a kind of standardized way, and it creates a more of an open dialogue around it for people to, for students and kids, and then they can speak with their parents as well. So I think in that way something needs to happen there, just to create more education and awareness around it, and also around different disorders, because it's still quite, it's spoken about but not enough, and it's not kind of, there's not a safe enough space yet, I think, for people to talk about it as openly.
Yeah, I think similarly, we just need more education. We need people to know more about eating disorders, so we need to talk about them sort of wherever possible. And I think there really does need to be more education in schools, in workplaces, and people more aware of what services are available and how they can get support.
Yes, I agree. And there's lots of comments. Obviously, I'm aware of time that people are talking about the legislation, which is, you know, this is the current theme. how to convince, like as Alexandra says here, like should be how the government could be more supportive of such legislation. And it's not just like the, it's the general online risks with young people. It's not just for eating disorders. That's, that's a massive issue with lots of ramifications, and to lobby like all these things to the government, and and have CAMS, child and adolescent mental health services, doctors and clinicians involved in this effort. So yes, these are all very important, and there's lots of comments about carers, and I think I'm more than happy we can organize another webinar which is going to be more interactive about carers and legislation, because this was the first time we present around social media, but I think the carers role is of paramount importance, and they have been neglected. That's so true. Somebody mentioned again in the comments here. And yes, there's lots of things that need to be discussed. However, I'm aware of time, and I know we have overrun, and but yes, I'm more than happy. Maybe we can in the future, like in the near future, organize another webinar which is going to be more directed, and it's going to be part 2 of today's webinar, and we can address more of these comments and have a more open discussion, because it's really good to see from your from your engagement and comments here that there's lots of things that we're not discussing. They're relevant to other aspects which are part of these things we addressed today. But thank you so much, Charlie.
Sorry, I know we're over time, but I just wanted to add, there's a few comments or questions mentioned about GPs and how they can spot signs, and if the GP doesn't take your concerns on board. As far as I'm aware, GPs are not currently required to have any training on eating disorders, but BEAT have provided a information and resource pack, essentially like a training, and you can send that directly to your own GP surgery, so they have access to it, which might be helpful for you if you're finding that your GP service is perhaps not taking your concerns as seriously as you would like. So you can find that on their website as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you everyone so much for your comments, contributions. We're going to follow up and share the slides, and then you can always email us, which is, again, the email address is on the website, on the slides. But if you also want Anya's and Francesca's email addresses, you can always email me, and yeah, we are more than happy to take it from there. Yeah, we're very delighted for all your contributions. These are all important things to reflect upon, actually, with regards to healthcare services and carers and legislation. I think the most dominant ones that we need to think about further. But again, thank you very, very much for attending.
Thank you, Maria, Anya, and Francesca. It's been a really insightful webinar. I've really enjoyed listening, like just having the opportunity to listen to all of the fantastic research. I hope you'll have a wonderful rest of day, and I hope to see you all again for maybe part 2 of the Eating Disorders webinar. Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Charlie. Thank you, everyone.